Welcome back to Skolkovo, and I'm glad to see everybody here. And today we are doing big event, and this event about IoT, this event about smart cities, and this event is going with our best partner Cisco Systems and Skoltech, and this company our partner, and it's a global leader in IoT also, and so you can know more about new solutions and you can connect to Cisco platform and earn some money, and you are going to know how to do it right. So, and I'm welcome here to open this event Senior Vice President Vasily Belov. Welcome, please.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for our honorable guests, and I think we should have offered them opportunity to speak up first, but I would use this stage more for the intro. We're really grateful for the support that we get from the Cisco company since 2010, the very initial start of the Skolkovo project when the first memorandum of understanding and collaboration was signed. In 2012, there was a partnership agreement signed, which actually put the framework for our future collaboration, which includes the move here, the R&D center of Cisco for various areas, including the IoT, which is the topic for the today's event. And Cisco is deeply involved in many aspects of our project, including the infrastructure, while it's a key infrastructure partner for the connectivity of our city, for the connectivity between the parking slots, the lights, how we manage the infrastructure, the internet access, and the Technopark, which is going to be launched in 2 weeks, our first large-scale structure in the area where the Open Innovations Forum, which will take place in 2 weeks, almost a week and a half now. It's the equipment for the internet and for all the connectivity is provided by Cisco on extraordinary conditions for our project, for which we are grateful so much for the Cisco company. But besides the infrastructure, what is nevertheless maybe even more important is the content support that we're experiencing from the Cisco company in various areas. Cisco invested so far through the Almas Capital, where they provided some capital in 4 our companies from the IT cluster. And these companies now are successful not only because of the money, but because it's a smart money, which helps them with international access as well. And Cisco is always our partner in such events as the Startup Village and other conferences, and with its intellectual support and market experience, it gives tremendous opportunities for our startups to grow, to get better understanding of how they can be successful and how they can access international markets. And I think that our strategic partnership has extremely bright future and much more things to be done. And thank you for our guests for being here. Alexei, we are in Skolkovo University today, so I think we will continue to jeopardize the stage from our management, and I will give you the floor for a few words about the university.
Thank you. Welcome, first of all, to our friends from Cisco, to Skoltech. It's a great honor to have you here, and welcome to others, our familiar faces, our people, to this event, which I hope will be useful, interesting for everybody. A few words indeed about Skoltech, what this is, since we are here using this opportunity to share with you what we are. In a few words, Skoltech is principally a new model of a university. Let me move over here. A new model which is different from many other universities in that it's not a standalone institution, it's not an enclosed institution, it's not what the analogy of ivory tower on the inside of which smart people work, produce papers, publish, and become famous scientists. Skoltek is an integral part of the Skolkovo Innovation Center, of this ecosystem, I would call it, close to startups, close to key partners, close to industry, which is very important. And it's open in that sense, an open model of an institute. It is a very international institute. I would say the most. There will be a few words about it later. But in Russia, it's definitely the most international organization of higher education. We have missions. These are just a few in no particular order of priority. But we would like to really to nurture and foster the sci-tech elite in Russia. In the sense that we are small. We're not a large-scale institution, as you will see later. We would like to connect the East and the West, which is called the melting pot, call it a center of gravity, where people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different countries physically come and work. And with that, ideas are connected. And with that, the technologies are being brought here and connected to the needs of industry. That's what, that helps being international in that sense very much to develop that angle. We would like to tackle important issues, which is the international character of Skoltek, is that we will put up in front of ourselves really global issues that need to for which the solutions need to be found. And that's how you keep internationally competitive. That's how you keep being successful in hiring good faculty and, which is even more important, finding excellent students, not only in Russia, but also from other countries. 5 principal outputs of Skoltek that we give to society. Obviously, it's we're the model for, we hope to be, for other institutions in Russia and beyond. But first of all in Russia, that we can help them develop the strategic programs to become places like us. Not that we are better or worse, but we would like to share what good we have with other institutions. We obviously give out scholarly output, which is a normal thing to expect to give from the university. We teach that, we produce talent and produce and give students to industry, to science, to academic communities, so that's also a priority for us. Innovation is a different thing, again, a differentiating feature of Skoltek, that we specifically, as you'll see later, work on including the elements of innovation inside of the curriculum that we teach to students. And even though they say you cannot teach innovation, we would like to, and we hope we do that, to bring the innovation part as close as possible to the teaching part. So connecting the knowledge with the application, research with consideration of use, that's how we provide the skills to students to be innovative. And also we help the government to set the R&D agenda, because obviously, and the big companies and the government, oftentimes they have problems with it, so we come with the knowledge and background and technology and foresight and vision and help them to guide the way to this difficult terrain. We are absolutely the anti-immigration project. We are for the Russians, and the best outcome for us is that the smart people who can go and study, say, at MIT or in Cambridge, instead will choose us. Not that they wouldn't go, but we'd like to be as good for them as possible, so the talent stays in country. Goes back and forth, it works for international companies, such as Cisco, for instance, work in Russia, but retains in here. And I already mentioned the global solutions. That's what keeps us having the value for the world. Otherwise, you lose the value localized. As a university, the most international, these are some of the partners that we have and work with. From day one, we set for ourselves a goal to create international, not an empty network, just signing MOUs and agreements, but really, we currently maintain over 50 active international engagements for the institute of our size. It's quite significant, and many of them are informal, meaning that a graduate student of Professor X would go and do research with the co-author of that professor in the university abroad, and vice versa. So teaching everything in English helps us to add this opportunity for students and for faculty. What we teach is that the similar tracks that Skolkovo Foundation supports in terms of startup support, energy, IT, space, design, manufacturing, biomass. These are the areas where we have developed our own educational programs based on European standard. Our main partners, MIT, they've helped us to create some of this curriculum as well. But these are the programs in which we have master's and PhD students. We are only graduate school. We don't have any undergraduate population yet, although that can eventually change. But so far, we're only graduate school. Faculty is another key value at Skoltek. As you can see, it's very international. But about a third of our faculty is from USA and Europe, but many of them have Russian last names, because these are the people, members of the Russian academic diaspora that work and live abroad, and then they come and work for us on different terms and conditions, but we bring people back, so the circulate the brains, not the turn the brain drain into the brain gain, as we like to say. And third of our faculty is Russian, and there's some obviously Asian and other regions that are not widely represented. These are the examples of some of our senior faculty, some of whom are in this room, that we bring for a number of years. Some come for a permanent contract, some come for a term contract of 5 years. And then the thing is, because when you would like to bring a good faculty member for good, you oftentimes come faced with the dilemma that that faculty member is already having it good somewhere else. So in a sense, you can get the issue of adverse selection, that you select not the ones that you want. So we bring them for a number of years, long enough for them to establish the school here, to have the graduate students graduate, and then keep the connections when they go back to their home institutions. Junior faculty is what we bet on. That's what brings us, as junior faculty is more active, obviously, because they have to be successful and make their career. These are, many of them are Russians that affiliate with us for their academic career, right? They build it with us. And these are, just some of the examples that list can be updated now as we have hiring faculty. As an institution is not in a steady state yet, it's growing. Students, another, I would say, key element of success for any institution, but for Skoltech being as unusual as it is, obviously more important. We are at 450 in terms of students. As I said, we're small, but if you look at a graduate school only, at the steady state will be at 1,200 students. That's one of the largest graduate schools in science and engineering, I'd say, around the world. And we keep purposely international student body very diverse. Not because we'd like to portray ourselves as an international student body, but that's important for cultural exchanges, it's important for connections being built, it's important from diversity in views and experiences from different countries and continents. So at about 20% of our student body is international. And, which is a very good sign for an engineering school, about a third of our students are female, which is, oftentimes you see different dynamics in the School of Science and Engineering as opposed to some other sciences, but we are having them in quite large numbers. And students are very smart, as you can see the average GPA. As in any institute which can call themselves an institute, when you have the first class graduate, that's when you call yourself more of an institute than before. Our first graduation was last year. The Prime Minister Medvedev came and issued this symbolic diploma number 1 to student body. This year we've graduated the second class at Skoltech, without the Prime Minister this time, but with 2 presidents, with the founding president and the new president. We've changed also the president this year. Research, I won't be detailed on this because the print is small and time is limited. But again, these are the same areas. We are very much connected in terms of the chain of support of innovation and research with the Skolkovo Innovation Center and Skolkovo Foundation to enhance the joint effort in bringing from the idea into the market. We are obviously in energy quite a bit, both in terms of system storage and recovery. We are in photonics and data-intensive biomedicine. And IT and space are the same areas of priority that you can see at the Skolkovo Foundation. Distinctive feature of Skoltech is a very good connection with industry. Is that oftentimes we together define the agenda for the big companies, especially state-owned companies, innovation agenda for the future, because they don't have the opportunity as much as we do to track all the cutting-edge research on a daily basis. As you know, the model of companies working with universities increasingly moves to the model of open innovation, where you go to university for a discovery which is bigger than potentially can be made on in-house, because you have the brain circulation, if there are new ideas. In our case, each 2 years we've changed the new inflow of smart people. So these are the examples of some of the companies that we work with. Industrial output. The new thing in Russia, the National Technology Initiative, which is about the future markets, the current technologies, the future markets. We are inside of several of the nets that they call them. I won't be specific on that. The presentations obviously will be available for further study. But this is also very, very applicable, very applied to current global technological challenges. And to us, it's more important not just the technological, but also market challenges, because the main thing is to connect technology with the market for good success. And finally, innovation is what we focused on, obviously being inside of the Skolkovo Innovation Center. Students actively engage in startups and research-based projects as they are in master's and PhD programs already while they're at Skoltech. Some of the examples of the companies that started at Skoltech, the Astra Digital, for instance, was founded by a Skoltech student, then graduate, went on to become the resident of the Skolkovo Innovation Center, then got some prizes in local competitions in Russia, then went to Slush, Finland, then she came in second of the 100 companies which were out of the 1,700 which wanted to pitch, 100 were allowed to pitch to investors, and she came in second. And I would say, you know, if you ask me, she came in second only because she was a company from Russia, because it was last year. The first place went to some company from Australia, you know, relatively not as, you know, potentially significant as her. And she's successful in raising funding and already moved on to venture rounds. And that's the typical sort of example of how we would like to grow from idea into the company, into the market. For that, we have the Center of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, a physical location at Skoltech, a program and a concept, if you will, of how you nurture startup ideas so they can become the startups and don't die at the stage of a paper, which is also a good output for a research institute, but for the one focused on innovation, we have to go further. So the model is very similar to the Spanda Center at MIT, as MIT is our key partner. Many of the methodologies that we work with in innovation laboratories, they come from our partnership with MIT and the innovation projects at MIT. We obviously modify them quite a bit, because at MIT the density of innovation ecosystem is much heavier. And you basically kick the tree and the venture capitalist falls down, you know, asking you, well, how much money would you like for a project? Here it's different. So that's all, we rely on the network of the Skolkovo Foundation mentors, for instance, well next door. That's the real synergy, that's the physical connection of companies with people who can help them be better. For that, we've created an international proof of concept program that we invite other universities to join so that they can share. And the first results are already coming up and being quite successful. I believe, and some pictures. This is the campus. This is the absolute place to see. It's now being built. These are some very outdated pictures, but now almost all the facades are done and almost all the roofs are done. That's 135,000 square meters of research-intensive space. Not just the building of this kind, the regular kind with office space and some labs, but, you know, heavy laboratory building with so you can imagine in the basement, in the center, what they call it, something center, logistics center. The truck, which is 38 meters long, can come and make a U-turn. That's and the length of the circle is 1 kilometer. So you can, you know, do 5 circles, you're done with your exercise for the day. These are, and this is some of the sketches how this building will look. The architect of the building, Anil Menon, basically one of the most well-known architects in the world. And this building is going to be absolutely beautiful. This is basically some of the stuff to look at. And I believe I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. And before I invite next our guest, I'd like some words about Skolkovo. Skolkovo is not only unique infrastructure, it's a heart of Russian innovation. And it's a unique territory and future coming soon. And you can test and evaluate your own new solution in here. So, and I would like to invite here our great guest, who knows everything about smart cities, about Internet of Things, and Senior Vice President, Mr. Anil Menon. Welcome, please.
Thank you. I think know everything is kind of a scary. I know everything that doesn't work. Good morning. Do I need this? Can you hear me if I don't use this in the back?
Unless
is that
it's
okay?
Recorded for the,
do I need to use this? Just so I want to make sure. Do I need to use it? Is that for recording? Okay. where's the... good morning. What I'm going to do, first let me say how excited I am to be here in Skolkovo, and I'm going to learn to say it correctly the way you say Skolkovo. I have been involved with this particular experiment, if you will, since 2007 or 8, or not, around that time when I was at IBM. And I remember the discussion at that point. And then when I joined Cisco, we got involved, and my chairman, John Chambers, was the one who drove this, and my former boss, Wim Elfrink, was the one who was involved in Skolkovo. I never got a chance to come, but because I have the distinction of being a professor, a tenured professor in a prior life, a long time ago before I joined IBM, I have a PhD in statistics, and I have a PhD in strategy. So I'm one of the very few people who does quantitative stuff and qualitative. I'm a structural equations modeler. That was my training. So I did literal modeling and then applied it to economic development. So because of that, they said, Anil, there's something happening in Russia. You need to get involved because it has an academic piece to it, because I was still publishing. And I never got involved in sense of coming personally till about a year ago when Wim retired, and then I was asked to get on the Skolkovo board and represent Cisco, not only in our investments, but also in helping with the future of this fantastic effort. So I've met with Mr. Victor Vexelberg. He flew to Bangalore to meet with me once to talk a little bit about what we could be doing more. But coming here in person is different than sitting in a board and seeing something on a picture, and Ed Crawley was talking about it. So I want to tell you, I've seen these kinds of projects because I was involved in Songdo in Korea. I was involved in Lake Nona. I was involved, of course, in our Bangalore global headquarters. When we built it, in India, we had 1,000 people employed by Cisco, 1,022 to be exact. This was in 2007. And today, we have got a campus, and the campus was built as an idea of future, how a future city would look like. And all the technologies that you're going to hear from my colleague Munish were employed and deployed there. Because we said if it can work in India, it'll work anywhere. And so we deployed it in India, and today we have 15,000 employees on our campus in Bangalore. Only about 60 or 80 of them work for India, rest is for the global startups, and we have about 30,000 full-time people working for our partners in India. So my vision, our vision was we could do something very similar in Russia too. Something over here, which is not only for Russia, but from Russia for the globe. And that, I think, is the aspiration that Cisco has when we got involved. And that is the discussion I have with the chairman every time I speak with him, or with my new CEO, Chuck Robbins, as to what can we do here that would be of value, not only to Cisco. Let us be very candid about it. We are not an academic institution, but we have academic interest, because we are a 30-year-old company. If you think about Cisco, and I'm going to start with that, because it's important that you understand, especially for what we're trying to do today and why we wanted to create this workshop. Cisco is only about 33 years old. Most of us don't even realize that it's only 33 years old. Not like an IBM or a 3M or a GE that's over 100 years old. In 33 years, we have gone from, when John Chambers took over as CEO in 1993, we were $400 million. Today we have 50 billion, and we have 60 billion in cash. But more important for us, about 70% of the world's internet traffic goes through a Cisco router or a switch. So the fact of the matter is, we are the backbone in many ways of the internet, and it is important for us to think about the future of the internet and the digital age, because it also is going to define whether we're going to be around for another 100 years, or whether we're going to die in the next 30 years. And so with that in mind is why we focus and invest in future thinking things. But what I also want to bring up here is, and where it is very exciting, this is what I do for a living. This is what I do at Cisco. My full-time, I tell John and I tell Chuck, I think you may be the highest paid executives in Cisco, but I have the best job in Cisco. Which is what I do is, what I'm focused on is the future of healthcare, the future of cities, the future of education, the future of societies. I just want to take a couple of examples, because you will see some of those in great detail from my colleague Munish, who leads it for me globally. What we do is, we are, let me come back again to this company, and it's important that you understand it. We have a deep DNA root of not only of innovation, but of partnerships. 90% of Cisco revenues, so 50 billion, 90% comes through partners. And in some countries, 100% comes through partners. It's not Cisco selling, we have to work through partners. Now, why is that important? 80 to 90% of our revenues come in every quarter by quarter, as opposed to many other large companies. Now, I want you to imagine, if I told you that we are creating, if I told you there is a company that was founded today, and within 1 year is a Fortune 500 company, how many would be impressed with that? Within 1 year, it's a Fortune 500 company. When we get our revenues 80 to 90% quarter by quarter, we have to create 2 Fortune 500 companies every year just to maintain our growth. 2 Fortune 500 companies. Which sometimes gets lost in the idea. How are you going to create 2 Fortune 500 companies every year for 30 years, and we have to do it from here onwards, just to keep it, unless we change our business model, where at the beginning of the year, you have a service and annuity stream that defines the market. So we have to do a lot of things as a company. What I'm doing, what Manish does for us, is look at how do we redefine the market, and not just keep doing the same thing again and again. So let me just take a few examples of what we do. Then I'm going to give you a context of how we approach it, how Cisco is thinking about it. We're not suggesting it is the exactly right thing, but when you have a certain position, we have the ability to influence standards, we have the ability to influence regulations, we have the ability to influence ecosystem development, we have the ability to influence the way customers are buying. And all of us here, I would argue, most of us, if not all of us here, are technologists. We all know the Betamax and the VHS game. I was a Sony fellow with Sony Corporation from 93 to 96. And I remember in 1993, Sony was the equivalent of Apple. Many of us have gray hair, so we might remember. A lot of the others were probably not born. But in 1993, when Sony stood up, and when I was appointed as one of the 2 Sony fellows, I asked the president of Sony at that time, Akio Morita's protege, Kunitake Ando-san, I said, Ando-san, why would you choose a non-techie for a Sony fellow? I'm not a tech. I don't do microprocessor. I'm not like the Russian thing. I've got the largest microprocessor in the world. Vasily was joking, saying, we in Russia, we like to build everything large. We, in fact, Bose, we have the largest microprocessors too. So, but the thing is, in 1993, if you think about it, so I asked him, why did you do this? And he said, the reason for that. Now remember, this would be the equivalent of Apple saying this today. At that time, he said, in 15 years, we're going to be dead, and we're going to be killed by Samsung. In 1993, Samsung would be the equivalent of Xiaomi, or one of these small startups that you're hearing about. It's not the problem that Sony didn't recognize that they're dying when they were at the peak, is that they couldn't do something about it. They predicted their own demise in some of these segments, but as a company, when you're successful, you have a winner's curse, you can't change. So that is why we created this entire entity like mine to say, let's put them away from San Jose, far away from San Jose, so you're not contaminated by success. So we sit in India creating that. And I have my CTO who used to sit in London, I have him who used to sit in Hong Kong, then we shipped him over to San Jose, and we are creating this group. And in that context is where you become very important. So I want to talk a little bit about where we are and how we're looking at this entire space, how we invest, what is our startup strategy. We need startups. We're looking for the next global startups. It's very important you understand, I am not personally interested in a startup that is focused only on Russia. We will invest in those, because Russia is important, it is large, it's critical, and all of that. But I am more excited, Manish is more excited, if you have a solution that I can go deploy in Indonesia, I can deploy in Mumbai, I can deploy in Bangalore. Your president, Putin, was in Goa yesterday, and I'm saying you because I'm sitting here. I know many of you might be global, but the fact is, Putin was in Goa 2 days ago. He signed an MOU with the country, with India, and says, we're going to help you with smart cities, we're going to help you in energy, we're going to do some stuff in oil and gas. I'm sitting here saying, leverage that. Because I want to think about the next startup that is going to come out of here that we are going to be deploying in the Barcelonas and the Copenhagens and in Lake Nonas of the world and in India and in Tokyo and in Australia, because that's what we want to do. And we want somebody who's rethinking the business model. Because at the end of the day, it's not going to be technology in these, it's going to be the business model, which is where we come in. Because we have the ability to do some of that. So let me just take one example, and now you're going to hear more from Munish, but I want to take one example that is it's a very interesting, but I want you to look at that as an example of the kinds of things that we should be thinking about and the kinds of things that we could be doing. If you think about the country of Tanzania, 47 million people. Of 47 million people, it's the highest birth rate. It's also got the highest birth, infanticide, if you want to call it, death rates at birth from congenital heart cases. 150,000 babies die every year in Tanzania just from a heart condition. In the whole country of 47 million, there's only 800 physicians. Only 800 physicians. There's not one single pediatric surgeon. There's not one single pediatric radiologist. There's not one pediatric pulmonologist. Not one. In the whole country of 47 million, with the highest birth rate and the highest death rate. So what we did was, there were two professors from Yale who returned back to India, medical doctors, both of them. And they were talking to us saying, we want to do something big for the rural communities of India and transforming the rural communities. We said, why don't we think about the digital infrastructure changing healthcare? We linked hospitals in Tanzania to this startup that this doctor started, who has never even read a balance sheet in her life. Never ever read a balance sheet. She said, I don't even know what a credit site was. Started this company. They are transforming healthcare in Tanzania by doctors sitting in Bangalore. Now we're doing it in Nepal and Kathmandu. But here's where it gets very interesting. That same platform is doing 166 hospitals in America, in tier 2 cities. That has lower surgeons, doctor rates, Appalachian Mountains, in the rural areas of New York. Today, that company's valuation, the last valuation I heard from her, she just got a valuation of about 900 million. 2 years later. The point is, you can do different things by transforming an industry, rethinking that industry. By the way, today there's over 1 million ICU patients for one large healthcare company, global company, 1 million ICU patients who are monitored 24/7 by doctors sitting in Chennai, in India. We're monitoring them, and when the vitals go out of space, they get on text, they get on digital cameras, and they tell the local doctors, go into room number 16 because you need to go check that. What that does is, you're thinking, redefining the entire education. And I'm saying, that's how we should be thinking about education, that's how we should be thinking about healthcare. So with that as a way of thinking, the idea is that the third wave of the digital economy is here, but we have to shape it and build it. It's a $3 trillion worldwide economy. I want to tell you what does that mean from a global point of view, but in Russia alone, we have sized that to be a $57 billion new economy to go after. In Russia alone, for the urban services. This is what we sometimes call smart cities. So what I want to talk about that is the third wave, just for context, and many of you are already there, so I'm going to not spend too much time. The first wave of the globalization, if you will, of the digital economy was IT services. I remember when I left India 36 years ago, when I told the customs officers and when I went for my passport or for my visa discussions at the US government, they said, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to go study, I'm going to come back and transform India, I'm going to focus on India, I'm very committed to India. I had no intentions of coming back. My whole goal is maybe I'll lie so well that I get the visa, once I'm gone, bye-bye India, never coming again. Right? I had no intentions of going back to India. Because there was nothing in India in 1980, 81 that would be attractive. And I think, Munish, even when you left to Chicago, a small college in the US, I don't think you thought we were going to come back to India. I remember when I was at IBM, and IBM stock wasn't doing that great, and the CEO, Sam Palmisano, standing up there, he was bleeding. You don't come to IBM to make money. You come to IBM to change the world, and here are the Nobel laureates we have. Here's what we do. He went on and on, and then he said the famous word. If you want to make money, if you want to become rich, you go to India and start a company, or you start a software company. in my entire existence, I never thought I would hear the sentence, if you want to be rich, go to India. But the world has shifted, the world has changed. And so the whole idea is, this entire 3 trillion, the first is the IT services transformed India, the globalizing. The second was the globalizing of engineering services. We never thought you could do global engineering services. It had to be in Germany, it had to be in America. You never thought you could have a center in Russia, you could have a center in India, you could have a center in Brazil. That was not the thinking. Today we don't think that way about managing cities. If you want to run something in water management or city management in Russia or in Moscow, it has to be in Moscow. If it's St. Petersburg, it's in St. Petersburg. If it's Mumbai, it's Mumbai. And I'm arguing, no, the new industry is like Takadu. How many of you have heard of Takadu? It's a startup. It's a Harvard guy, Israeli. His company is headquartered in Tel Aviv. It's a startup, cloud-based startup, and he's managing all the water management system of Singapore, in Adelaide, in Cairo, and elsewhere. You don't need to be in Singapore to manage the water systems of Singapore, to look for leaks. You don't need to be there. It could be a startup out of Skolkovo. It could be someone based outside of St. Petersburg. So you don't have to go into a crowded city. It could be a beautiful city where you're sitting there with a great cloud strategy transforming healthcare, education, jobs. This is a $3 trillion business and 57 billion for Russia. But now look at 3 trillion and saying, for Russia, how can I drive economic development outside of Russia? So with that in mind, let me just say why Cisco. And I'm going to give you, only because I think you need to understand the culture of Cisco to work with Cisco. We are not like many other companies. We are in the sense that we don't look at customer trends. It's absolutely fascinating for me as an ex-professor, ex-strategist. When I used to do presentations at IBM, we used to do 30 pages of strategy stuff. Here's the trends. Here's the customer preferences. Here's the competitive profile. Here's the competitive market shares. And then you say, here's what we want to do. If I go to 2 slides at Cisco that talks about market trends, they're like, it's already too late, man. Tell me the transitions. So I'm going to talk to you about transitions that we can shape collectively because you're Skoltech, you have some of the best thinkings and minds. At a company like Cisco with our partners, we should be thinking about how a 3M, how a GE, how a Boeing, all of us coming together can transform this transition. So transition is not yet here, but it's something that we can create, something we can shape. That is, I think, what I saw in the description of Skoltech. So here's the first transition, and I'm going to give you some numbers which will blow your socks because it's already here and we are not paying attention to it, which is the macro and the social demographics. Second is the economic shifts. My chairman, and now my CEO was in India last week, and he said a famous line, as my chairman used to say it, which is, if you're not relevant in India, you're not going to be relevant anywhere in the world in 50 years. India being a catch-all for emerging markets. So that's the second. And the third one, which is where we are all, is that technology is not about technology anymore. And especially the mobile internet. So we have to think about how digital technologies can transform space and time. Think about how we are. Even today, we say, I got to go to shop. I'm going to go to the store. I'm going to go to the office. I'm going to go to the police station. I'm going to go to the hospital. In fact, some of us even say, I'm going to go Google this. Like, why do you need to go Google this? Google should come to you. Knowing what you're doing and give you the options. So the mobile internet is here. And yet we have not leveraged that from a business point of view. And that is what I want to talk to you about in the next one day. When you work with Munish and our teams coming in, we have said time and space is the first thing we got to stop thinking about. Because that is the blinder. So if you look at this, this is where, and by the way, the transition means it's happening. And we took these 3 as the world's biggest. If you look at just the biggest shift, aging, shrinking, and growth. Look at the world. In 2000, 6.8% of the world's population was over the age of 65. By 2050, 16.2. Now Russia number is not up there, but by 2050, Russia will be almost 1/3 over 65. And worse, Russia will shrink by 21%. So not only are you going to be older, you'll be shrinking in population unless there's immigration coming in to make up for it. Look at Europe. Germany is going to be shrinking by 15% and almost 33% will be over the age of 65. Why is over the age of 65 important? because it impacts the economic development of the GDP. Because over 65, they are taking out of the GDP, not putting into the GDP. So in order for for Germany to maintain its standard of living in 2050, the standard of living that they currently have, if they want to maintain it, they have to grow their GDP by 6%. They have not grown their GDP by more than 2% in the last 20 years. Japan is going to shrink by 20%, and over 40% of Japan will be over the age of 65. Now Russia has got a history of immigration, of different cultures coming in. Japan does not have that. How is Japan going to maintain a standard of living with 20% less people and 40% now depending on the society to manage them? Germany, France, Italy, same story. I just came back from Slovenia. Slovenia, Ljubljana has got 280,000 people. In the last 6 months alone, they got 220,000 refugees coming through. They can't handle it. Germany, Hamburg cannot handle it. There's nothing to do with racism when they say stop, enough. I can't handle it. I can't manage it. So we have to rethink, and then you look at the hyper growth. India is going to be growing by 55%. Saudi Arabia, look at Saudi Arabia, 110% is going to be over double the size. And then you go into Ethiopia, Congo, Yemen, Afghanistan. The fact of the matter is, in the old days, all of that problems would have been just located there. Today, those problems will move the boundaries and come into the other areas if you don't know how to manage the future of society. This is the world we are living in, and we're going to be living to our children. So what can we do differently? That's what I want to talk about today. It's not about smart cities. My business used to be called Smart Cities many years ago. We changed to Smart Connected Communities. Because it's not enough to think about cities. It's more important to think about rural areas, especially in emerging markets. Nobody leaves a rural area in Indonesia, in India, in Latin America, in Africa, or even in Russia. They don't leave a rural area, leave their family behind because they want to leave their family behind. It's because of lack of urban services, education, jobs, and security, and all the other things we expect in a city is not there in the rural areas. Can you deliver that using different technologies into rural areas? Then you don't have as much of an inflow into cities. This is the future that we want to create. Now you come back to the economic rebalancing, and why is it important for us to think about emerging markets? In 1820, India and China were the world's largest two economies, and almost 40% of the world's economy, just two countries. Russia was about 1.7% in 1820. By 2010, US was number one. China had moved up from 3% in 1999 to 9%, but now look at 2050. That's not too far away, by the way. In the scheme of world and the scheme of society, that's not too far away. By 2050, India and China will be 1/3 the GDP of the world. And then you have US, which is number 3 at 13%, and Indonesia, you have Brazil, Mexico, Japan, Russia at 2.5%, and look at Nigeria. And then you have Germany. UK is gone, Italy is gone. It's only one country from the Europeans that's going to be the top 10 GDP countries. All the others, you better know how to work in Indonesia, in Brazil, in Russia, in India, and all the other emerging countries, or you are not going to be at scale to be a global MNC. So if a Cisco has to be around, we better know how to work there. If Skolkovo has to be around, you better be creating solutions and products for those places. And by the way, the per capita GDP, the richest countries are going to be still Norway, Singapore, Hong Kong. It's still going to be UK. It's still going to be Japan. Per capita, which means you have to have a different business model to deliver into Indonesia. How do you deliver healthcare, education at an affordable consumption pattern where you make money on volume, not on a per person? This is what you will hear today from our point of view on education, on healthcare, on jobs. So, I'm giving you a context because when you look at all the challenges globally, and I'm not making a political statement here, but to look at every country, all the way from Finland, Australia, Austria, Germany, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, UK with the Brexit, US with the elections that's going on now. Everywhere the current incumbent political parties globally are not connecting with their old traditional voters. Why? Because of these. There's a digital divide. By the way, in the city of Manhattan, the ICT spend for technology and communication is more than the combined sub-Saharan Africa countries. Just one region, small Manhattan. So digital divide, income inequality, resource constraints, healthcare, education, and urbanization. Today, 10,000 people per hour are leaving a rural area to go into a city. 10,000 per hour, which means to maintain urbanization of the globe today as we speak, we have to build one new London every month for the next 36 years. We have to build a London as it currently stands every month. And there is no way we're going to be able to do that. That doesn't stop people from coming into a London, coming into a Germany, coming into an Amsterdam, coming into a Rotterdam, coming into an India, Bangalore from other areas of India. This is smart connected communities and the challenge that we're trying to fix. You are going to hear more on parking, on lighting. An average Parisian spends 4 years of their life looking for a parking space. Between the hours of 4 and 8 in a typical large city, more than 50% of the traffic in downtown area are people driving around looking for a parking space. Now, if I can take every parking space information using IoT, global location services, sensors, and put it up into an open data platform that allows everyone who's driving in to know which parking spaces are open, and then pick and choose those parking spaces, and be willing to pay differential pricing on the parking based on their needs and the time of the day, your number 2 or number 3 source of revenue for a city, which is parking, will be at least 2 or 3 times more. And by the way, now turn it around a little bit. In America alone, I'm just taking America alone, there are 1 billion parking spaces. That, when you add it up, is 6,800 acres, which is larger than the state of Connecticut for parking. If I have autonomous cars and I have a shared economy where nobody owns their own cars, but the shared economy of cars, and the cars are running around all the time, picking up people, changing it, I don't need parking spaces in San Francisco and Chicago and London. And the parking spaces, 10 to 12 to 15% of city downtown is parking, which is high premium pricing of land. We have to rethink, and that is what we are saying. To do this, we better have new ways of thinking. So, I'm going to finish up by saying, what if should be your predominant thinking now to going forward to saying, how can we redo this? And the question I ask, what if you had an affordable digital infrastructure, would you run healthcare the same way? So if you had unlimited computing, if you had unlimited storage, if you had unlimited bandwidth, and if everything was connected to everything, would you do education the same way? Just one example more, just to make that point. Korea, South Korea spends 3% of the GDP on private tutoring for science and math and English. 3% of the GDP. $15 billion per year in Korea is spent on English education, just to teach people to speak English. 15 billion. And an average year, 500,000 families will have a father or a mother living abroad outside of South Korea with one of the child to learn English. So they might be in UK, they might be in Australia, they might be in India to learn English. So what we have done in this song though, we have connected Korean American kids who are also speaking Korean but have learned English and are in college and saying, now go, because the time difference being what it is, you can now do, using immersive technology to the country that is the most digitally enhanced and controlled, do video immersive technologies. And if you're on telepresence, after a few hours, you feel like you're there, right there. And you can train. Right now, the highest paid teacher in Korea, highest paid teachers in Korea are English teachers. One of them is making $3 million. But you know what was the number one? You remember that when we did the survey? Number one request from Korean parents for their children, number one, access to a librarian to tell them what books to read. and they want somebody who speaks English. There are underemployed librarians sitting in India, in Nebraska, in London, who can now teach Korean kids on what books to read, and literature, on history, and just tell them, this is the book, and they will pay $125 a month as an app, just for access. So this is the way we are saying, if you had a digital infrastructure, then what would cities do to change their ways of thinking? And by the way, this is something that here in Skolkovo you should know, but just look at the statistics on it. From 1992 to 2016, one MIP has gone down from $200 to 2 cents, and now it's almost free. Same thing with bandwidth, same thing with storage. So we have that. But where we come in Cisco, and where we are looking at the future, is that internet is transforming to becoming a video internet. And that is the biggest revolution. And we're saying if smart objects are connected, 50 billion smart objects, what happens? And this is where I want to say that by 2019, 80% of all IP traffic on internet is going to be video based. And it's not going to be little cute cats. It is going to be a doctor sitting in one country, talking to some other doctor somewhere else. But here's the interesting thing. A Russian doctor who doesn't speak a word of English, talking to a doctor in India who speaks English only, but not a word of Russian, when they look at an X-ray, one is not going to say, I look at your heart doesn't look great, and the one doctor is looking at the heart, the other is looking at the stomach. No, they know a heart looks the same. But bring two mayors together in Russia and tell them, talk about your water management system, they don't talk about the same thing. There are no standards for parking. No two parking spaces look the same. All of you are IT people. Think about how can you create an IT platform if two platforms for parking don't look the same. Lighting poles. You want to do lighting management, but the light fixtures on the top, the designs of those are not the same. So how will you have common video analytics sensors that are able to scan and do things if you don't have common? It becomes a systems integration exercise. It's too cost prohibitive. We need standards. This is what we should be thinking about collectively. This is where an academic institution becomes interesting. So we have to start by saying, if you had a video internet, not a data internet, a video internet, what will we do for healthcare, education, and entertainment and others? So, this is where we want to leave, and you'll hear more about parking and water and lighting, the kinds of things we're doing. But I just want to say, we are saying this is a $3 trillion market. I've already mentioned it. I want to give you a breakdown of that segments, and then I'll stop. 1.9 trillion globally is on open apps, like a parking app. This is the opportunity out there. $1.9 trillion just for that, which is larger than the global IT market today. For companies like IBM, Accenture, Oracle, Microsoft, they are going after, collectively after a segment that is smaller than just one vertical. But here's where it gets interesting. Connected learning, 258 billion. Connected smart parking is 41 billion. You could have a company that is $1 billion in revenue sitting here in Russia, in Skolkovo, managing smart parking globally. Do you think anybody is going to come back and say, that's security concerns, man, if somebody's sitting in Russia or in India managing parking? No, they don't care. But it is a cloud-based technology. Connected water systems. By the way, 30% of the global food production is wasted. 30%. While we have hunger. 60%, up to 60% of water in emerging markets is wasted because of leakages. You have 3M here. I'm very close to 3M, and as the president of 3M, I always tell them, why don't you take all the pipes that you're building, embed sensors into those pipes, embed sensors into the way the pipes are developed, into the coatings that you're creating, and then let those sensors be connected through an open data platform so you can detect a leak at its source much more quickly. You don't have to dig up everywhere. Connected waste management and smart lighting. These are huge, huge opportunities. Now in Russia, where you say the value at stake for Russian public sector is almost 152 billion by 2014. That was last 2 years ago. Now I recognize with the ruble and all these numbers are off. But you know what? Let's take them off by 20%. That's still a lot of money. When I go up in front of my boss and he says, what's the market, Tim? I said, don't worry about the market, Tim. How big do you want me to be? I'll do it. Because at $6 trillion, I don't care if IBM makes a lot of money, Microsoft makes a lot of money, everybody can make a lot of money because there's no way a Cisco can go and take more than a small piece of that business. I'm not that greedy. 20 billion is enough. But think about how big a business you can create out of here. Because you know what? Skoltech, I came from a university academic setting. You're creating something new. Redefine the industries with a business model on top of it. Because nobody's sitting there. We have an expression, God could create the world in 7 days because there was no installed base. We have installed base in most other places. Today we don't have installed base here, and you can redefine it. But we're saying in Russia, we have defined it as these, your segments. We may be off, but we can work it out. This is systematically done. There's a huge opportunity within Russia, but I'm saying, let's think about it globally. So, this is where we are here, this is why we are engaged, this is why I'm excited. And over the last 1 year, this is my first trip here, it won't be my last. Victor has made sure it won't be my last. In fact, I see him this afternoon because he said, you're not coming here. So I said, I'm coming. So here I am. But Jonathan also, and I'm the executive sponsor for Cisco for Russia, so this is an important thing for me. And I am very passionate about emerging markets. And I still say Russia is not an emerging market. It's already emerged way back when. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot more opportunities out there in Indonesia and India and Malaysia that Russia can be exploiting and can be doing. And that's what we should be thinking of here. And so the question is, we are ready, are you all ready, are we all ready together? Now I'm going to end by saying, my team always tells, Anil is like this big dreamer, and I'm like, yes. And I tell my team, I have a sales team too, I tell them, I want to rob the bank. But on the way to robbing the bank, make sure you rob a lot of the gas stations too. Because even if you don't end up at the bank, you've made enough money to keep yourself employed. It's a bad example about robbing and stealing, but the find is, I think you understand. Even though this is huge, there's a lot of immediate opportunities that we can leverage today. We have already created a huge business for us. But I still think we're too small. We should be at least 5 billion, 6 billion in smart cities. And I think we can. So I just want to finish my example by saying, so one of my heroes, and I'm sure it's Thomas Edison. Now I collect two things, my hobby. One is I collect antique Baluchi carpets, the tribal rugs, and I collect Edison cylinder phonographs, not the gramophones, but the cylinder type, from the 1881s to 1912. I stop at 1912, then after that it's too modern. Now, if Edison was born again and if he came to my home in Florida, he would see this machine. This is our holy grail called Idalia. He would say, I know that, I played with it, that's great, it's in perfect mint condition, it's original. Then I said, let me show you what my daughter listens to music today. This is what you created, this is what I listen to. Let me show you what my daughter listens. There's no way he will be able to relate what he came up with to what she's doing with the iPod. No way, he'll never be able to connect that dots. He will have to sit there and he'll struggle, he'll not figure it out. But in 1892, this was a patent he applied for, which he got, for the electric grid, which created GE in 1892. This is what the grid looks like today. I would argue not much of a change. So the question to ask is, why did one industry that he created transform itself so much, and another industry which is so vital to the economies of the world has not changed so much? And I would say it's because of 5 things that didn't happen in the second, which is what we have to do here to create this IoT world that we're talking about. We have to have visionary leadership of transforming healthcare, visionary leadership of transforming education, transforming the way cities are managed, the way environments are managed. How can we reduce the carbon footprint? How can we rethink that? And more important than that, how do you redefine the economy of an industry or the economy of a city? And whenever I go into any cities, we want to set up a global innovation center, and that's what I said to the deputy minister yesterday in Moscow. I said, I'm okay opening up innovation centers. I'm open to even creating a center of excellence, but tell me what you want to do with it that is global. Because otherwise, I will have Jonathan and the others focus on it, but I'm saying, what are you going to do to transform education in the world or healthcare, that you're going to be the center of excellence where standards are written, where people will say, like in telecom, India has become that way. IBM's 40% of profit comes from the telco sector that is run globally out of India, Bangalore. When we started that, I was the executive sponsor. That would never have been imagined. But because of Bharti Airtel that said we're going to have a business model that is different, IBM had to change. And because IBM changed for one customer, they changed for Vodafone and for Idea and Cellular and the others. And then before you know it, Deutsche Telekom, AT&Ts of the world said, we want to copy that model because that's the more affordable model. Can we do that in healthcare? Can we do that in education? Which sector is a visionary leadership? Second is the global open standards. It has to be global open standards because then only can you scale and replicable. And then regulations have to be changed. Just simple things like the lighting pole. We all talk about the lighting poles, but the electricity to the pole is not 24/7. How am I going to have an access point to monitor environment and the parking and security if you don't have continuous lighting to the pole? Simple things. There's an exit sign right there. It's in Russian, but I can tell you it's an exit sign. Why do you need that exit sign? You'll spend $60 on that. You won't get a permit if you don't have that exit sign. But that exit sign is from a time that you needed it, because today with your digital phone and your digital supplies, if there's a fire, it should come up and saying, on this floor, there's nothing, stay here, don't go, because you're going to create a problem. And that can be done on your phone with the alerts, with the digital sample. I don't need that. By the way, I have to believe that you're saving water here. You're cutting down the use of municipality water because you're becoming smarter with the water. Yet, you will need in-ground retention tanks based on square footage and number of people, not how much water you're getting from municipality. Which means, water is going into an in-ground retention tank that you're going to spend money on, is going to flush into the sewage system, and you're wasting water because the regulation hasn't kept up with the digital world. This is a global problem, by the way. So we have to rethink smart regulation. And then public-private partnership. We can't do this individually by one company or by one city. It has to be true partnerships with the government enabling through regulation, government giving ideas of saying, how can you deploy and make my city a living lab? So what I told the Deputy Minister yesterday was, can you make Moscow the living lab for some technology, so when I have a customer or a city, Copenhagen, and I say, you want to study it, go over, like we do with Copenhagen and outdoor lighting. Public-private partnership, and the last one is where you all come in. I can't do it, he can't do it, we are not the ones with the best ideas, you all are the ones with the best ideas in startups. We want smart ecosystems because that is the future of this. Coming up with innovations, technology, putting in a business model on top of it for scale, and then going from there. So that is our story. That is what we are wanting to do, and that is what I was talking to Jonathan about this, and Jonathan has been forcing us saying, can we do a workshop? Can we start that? Get started here in Skolkovo and go from there. I'm hopeful that today and tomorrow is the beginning of that conversation, not the end of it. I'm hoping that we can do a lot more. We can do a small part as Cisco, but we can do a smart part that is important and critical. We have access to funds, we have access to customers, we have access to platforms. That is what we do with many cities and many innovation centers, and hopefully we can start that here. I'm going to pause here to see if there are any questions, any thoughts, any suggestions, because I know Munish, and by the way, I'll introduce Munish Ketrapal, who runs all my solutions globally. He's the one who decides on partners, which are the partners we're going to prioritize, which partners we're going to invest. In fact, we have a call at 6 o'clock this evening to look for acquisition targets on IoT for cities. So he's the right person to be here, and he works 26 hours a day, not a month. But so he is highly innovative, he's looking for partners, so that is why we're here. So with that, let me just pause and say again, thank you, Vasily and team, for having me here, and Jonathan for your support from the local Cisco. But any questions, any thoughts, suggestions, hopefully this was useful, because I wanted to give you the Cisco point of view. I'm not suggesting it was an unbiased view. This is what we are building our business on. And there might be a role for some of you to partner with us. Thank you.